He heard footsteps in the attic, but he lives on the ground floor. I'm not the kind of person who scares easily. I used to laugh at horror movies, stayed up late gaming, and called friends at 2 in the morning for stupid reasons. But after that night, I stopped laughing. I stopped staying up late. I stopped thinking my house was just a house. This happened last winter, when everything was dark early and the streets were quiet. I lived alone in a small bungalow on the edge of town, nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, small kitchen, 1 story. My neighbors were nice, but kept to themselves. It was the kind of place where the loudest sound you usually heard was someone mowing the lawn in the afternoon. I liked it. It felt safe. On the night it started, I was on my couch scrolling through my phone, a half-eaten bag of chips on the coffee table, the TV playing some true crime documentary in the background. It was around 11:30. The house was warm, the heater clicking on and off. My dog had been my roommate for years, but she was old and past the previous spring. Since then I liked the silence. I didn't need noise to keep me company. I remember hearing the first sound like an idiot, putting it down to the house settling. A soft creak above me. Old houses do that. I stood up, stretched, thought about turning off the TV, and told myself to stop being paranoid. Still, it struck me as odd because the noise didn't come from the attic fan or from the pipes. It sounded like a footstep, measured, the kind of single step someone takes when they don't want to be heard. I shrugged and walked to the kitchen to get a drink. The refrigerator hummed. I poured water, took a sip, and froze. Another step. This one closer. It wasn't a creak. It was deliberate. My house doesn't have a second floor. The attic is the small crawl space behind the ceiling, maybe big enough to store a suitcase. No one could walk in there. Still, the sound was unmistakable. Footstep, pause, footstep, pause. It was walking in circles. Whoever, whatever, was walking didn't sound like someone clumsy. It sounded like someone used to being quiet. I remember slamming the water down on the counter, grabbing a flashlight from the junk drawer. I kept it because we had storms sometimes. I clicked it on and shone the beam across the ceiling. Nothing. No hole in the drywall. No sign of anyone. The light showed cobwebs and the square of the ceiling vent. My palms were damp. I called my friend Daniel. If I'm honest, I called because I needed someone to hear me say something and respond that it was nothing. He answered on the first ring. "Hey man, what's up?" he asked. His voice was calm and stupidly normal. "Do me a favor and don't laugh," I said, because I didn't want to be the guy who panicked over shadows. "Do you hear a noise in the background? Like footsteps?" He paused. "No, I don't. You okay?" Yeah. It's probably the heater." I tried to make the sound in my voice casual. "I'll call you back." I hung up and went to the bedroom. The room was dark, the curtains drawn. I felt stupid for being scared, but the sound kept me on edge. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. For a while, there was only the hum of the heater and the soft squeak of the house settling. Then, like a hand on the back of my neck, the sound came again, right above me. Slow steps, very light, like someone testing the boards. There were 3 steps in a row, then a pause, then one close to the vent. I moved without thinking. I got onto the dresser and pulled down the vent cover. Dust fell into my hands. The crawl space smelled like old cardboard. My flashlight showed nails and insulation. The space was narrow. You could put a few boxes in there. You could not stand upright. You could not walk. I sat back on my heels, and the vent clattered in my hand. When the sound came again, this time I was sure it wasn't above the ceiling. It was coming from the walls. Feet shuffling. Something scraping like someone moving furniture, very carefully. My heart kicked up, and for the first time I felt sweat go cold on my back. I went to the front door, turned the deadbolt, checked the windows, and locked the bedroom door from the inside. I know how that sounds. I'm not proud. I was alone in the house with doors locked and my phone in my hand. I felt ridiculous and terrified all at once. Then the phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Asterisk, don't wake up. Asterisk. I stared at it. My vision tunneled. I thought it might be a joke until I realized my phone had been in the bedroom. No one should be on my porch. My rational brain told me someone could be messing with me. A prank spam. But the timing, the message came seconds after the steps. No one should have been able to get a signal strong enough to text me inside my house without being outside. I called 911. That's what sounds normal people do. I thought about calling my friend too. I pressed the digits, but before the call connected, the lights went out. Complete black. I could hear the static in my ears. The TV went silent. The heater stopped. Time fell into a weird, thick quiet. Then there it was, clear as air. A soft knock on the bedroom door. 3 light raps. I couldn't move. My throat was dry. Whoever was on the other side knocked again, slower this time, and then heard something else. A voice, low, right next to the door. "I'm sorry," the voice said. It sounded like someone whispering through layers of fabric. "I can't get down." I could have left through the window, sprinted to a neighbor's house, done something. I didn't. My legs felt like jelly. I pressed myself against the closet wall, the flashlight laying beside me like another person. I felt anger then, at myself for being so scared, at the world for giving me such a night. I whispered for it to go away. The way you tell yourself a nightmare will end. The knocking stopped. I held my breath so hard it hurt. After a while, the noise came again, but this time it was in the living room. The sound of slow, patient footsteps above the pattern of the floorboards, then the scrape of something sliding. I got up and tiptoed to the door, crawled to the gap at the bottom, and saw, through the sliver of hallway light, the kitchen light flick on for a second, then off again. Then in the darkness, the doorbell sounded. Not a ring. A single, long, flat sound, like someone holding down the button. I could see, in the small rectangle of window next to my front door, a faint shadow. It stood still for 5 seconds, then the shadow moved away. The doorbell stopped. I dialed Daniel again, hands shaking. This time he answered, and his voice was more awake. "Don't be an idiot," he said. "If you're scared, get outside. Go to my place." I opened the door. My hands knew what to do, and walked out into the thin winter air. It smelled like snow even though there wasn't any on the ground. The street was empty. My porch light swung in the cold breeze. I could see my neighbor's house across the way, its blinds closed tight. I half expected to see figures moving there, but there was nothing. I stood on the front step for a few minutes and told myself that was enough. I called Daniel. He'd come over, and we would laugh about how I'd scared myself. But before I could dial, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. You left," the text read. Then, a second later, asterisk, "Thank you for letting me out." Asterisk. My breath stopped. I slammed the door and locked it, bolting deadlocks like a man who'd seen too many late-night specials. I stumbled back into the living room and turned on the TV. Static and snow filled the screen. I hit power on the modem. No internet. I checked the front door, locked. I checked the back, locked. All the windows were drawn. I thought about telling you exactly what happened next, but when I talk about the sequence, people think I'm mad. They say things like, "Maybe it was a raccoon," or, "You were sleep-deprived." I wish those were the answers. I went into the kitchen, grabbed every kitchen knife I could find, and sat on the tile with them across my lap. The house was a concert of small sounds, pipes, the fridge, the tick of the heating unit resuming. And beneath it, the rhythm I come to dread. Soft steps moving toward the center of the house, then a pause, then the hollow sound of something that might be breathing. Time stretched. 1 hour felt like 10. I dozed off for a second and woke to the feeling I was being watched. At the window by the sink, where you can see the empty yard, something pressed its face against the glass and then moved away. It was too wide for a human face, too pale, no features I could make out. My hands went numb. I don't know how long it watched me, but the next part one remember clearly. The front door opened in the middle of the night by itself. Not slowly, not gently. It just swung inward on hinges and stopped as if someone had put a hand on it and then let it rest. The wind didn't blow. The door stood open. Then I heard it, the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps across the threshold. Not many, maybe 4 or 5 across the floor. Each one was careful. Each one drew closer to the living room. I backed away from the counter until I bumped into the table and fell, knives clattering everywhere. My logical brain kept telling me to run. to call someone, to do anything but freeze. But my body seemed to have other ideas. I covered my mouth and crouched down. I could feel the hair on the back of my neck bristle with static. A hand, cold and wet, closed around the leg of the couch next to me. Not nails, not a human grip. I could feel the fingers like ropes around the wood. It stayed there, holding, and then let go. It moved. The next sound was close, right behind me. The air smelled like the ocean and old pennies. Something whispered whether I wanted it to or not. We were trapped, it said. We stayed. I thought I would faint. I thought I would pass out. I choked back a scream. The voice, when it spoke, moved the way a radio station moves when it loses signal, warped, stretched. But I recognized one thing in it, sorrow. Then the impossible happened. From somewhere above, a place where no one could walk, came the sound of a small foot tapping. A pattern. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, like someone counting. It came from the ceiling vent in my bedroom, like a small child playing. Tap, tap, tap. The noise followed by a whisper through the metal. Don't wake up. I closed my eyes and whispered to whoever was in my walls. Please go. Leave me alone. For a second, nothing. Then the house sighed. Not the quiet, settling sound of wood cooling, but a deep, long intake of air. It felt like the house was inhaling and taking me with it. The lights flickered and the temperature dropped so fast that my breath came out in white puffs. The hair on my arms stood up like a brittle fence. I don't remember how long I stayed crouched there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. But when the dawn leaked through the blinds, a strange calm had replaced the noise. The front door was shut. The locks were still in place. The knives were on the floor. My phone had battery, and the unknown number had one more message. We're still here, it said. That was the last time I slept in that house. I moved out that same day. I didn't bring much with me. I took some clothes, my laptop, and a box of things I couldn't bear to leave behind. I left everything else, the couch, the TV, the old kitchen table, there, like an offering. People asked questions. My parents wanted to talk to the police. I told them everything I could remember. The police were polite and asked the standard questions. They walked through the house, their flashlights carving bright paths through the rooms. They said there were no signs of forced entry, no prints, no damage. There was dust in the attic vent. The walls were just walls. They suggested that stress and nightmares might explain it. They offered contacts for someone who could change the locks and check the insulation. They meant well. When I sold the house later that year, the buyer was a young couple who loved old houses. They moved in and invited me for coffee once, smiling like people do who don't know. I felt the old itch at the base of my skull that said I should warn them. I didn't. I told myself the noise had been in my head. Maybe it had been. Maybe we all make our own ghosts. But here's the thing I didn't tell the police, and I've only told a handful of people since. The same night I moved out, I followed the old man, who helped me load a box into his truck. I wanted to see him home. Not because of anything else, just because it felt wrong to leave someone alone I had come to trust. He lived 2 streets over. He had keys to my house, because he had helped me move things in years before. At his porch, I saw another light in his window, faint blue, like a phone flashlight pressed against glass. His house was small, the curtains drawn. I stood there for a minute and felt that same cold press against my spine. The light in his porch window blinked 3 times, slowly, and then went dark. I left. I told myself I can't warp the world with fear. I told myself I'd stopped hearing it. I told myself I was safe. Then a month later I saw a news headline on my feed about a house down the street where an old woman had died in her sleep. They said she had lived alone and no one had found her for days. She had been in a small bungalow, much like mine. The article had a picture of her smiling on the front porch. The timestamp on the photo read 12:47. I stared at that timestamp until my coffee went cold. I still get messages, sometimes from numbers I don't know. They come and go. Mostly spam. Once in a while they come at night, when the world is quiet. I don't open them. I don't answer. When my friends ask why I moved away from a place I loved, I tell them it was the market and a job opportunity. I tell them it sounds like the most boring explanation in the world because I want to bury the truth. The real reason is this. There are noises that don't belong to the natural world. There are footsteps that remember the sound of your house. There are voices that know your name before you say it aloud. There are things that can tap the ceiling of a one-story bungalow and make you believe in long stairs upstairs. If you're home alone tonight and you hear a footstep over your head, count to 3. If the next step comes, don't go to the door. Don't call someone who will tell you it's nothing. Sit very still until the sunrise. And if, by some terrible chance, your phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number that reads, "Don't wake up," then do not sleep. Not with the house's doors closed around you, and not with the quiet pressing against your bones. Because once they start testing the boards, they may be learning the shape of your floor. And if they learn that, they can learn the sound of your steps too. I don't scare easily anymore, but I know footsteps when I hear them. And I know now that some houses keep things inside them. They keep memories. They keep people who can't leave. They keep promises.